Hey, everybody. Good morning. I am so glad you're here. I'm Rita Hickman. I'm a body mind and I work with women who are in toxic and narcissistic relationships. I help them really sort of find their voice and move forward and take their life back. So today's topic is, are all toxic relationships narcissistic relationships? So, well, if you've been following these videos for a while, you know that narcissism is a spectrum. It's a spectrum of a little bit of narcissism to it's your entire way of looking at the world. And different dynamics, different situations, different mental health disorders, different situations in life will make someone either more narcissistic or less narcissistic. So many of the qualities that people that come with narcissists, those can be in different degrees as well. The real rule of thumb as to whether something is a narcissistic relationship for you is whether in the relationship your needs are being met or not. Many times people come into narcissistic relationships with a lot of love bombing, with someone really trying to get your attention, to get you attached, to get you connected, to get you bonded to them. This is how a trauma bond can start. You know, it starts with people really getting connected on an emotional level or feeling connected on an emotional level. And someone who is a narcissist, those qualities are like times 100, times 1,000, times 10,000 of narcissism, of habits, of ways of being, of personality traits, of ways of interaction, relationship skills. You know, we all struggle with a lot of different things. You know, there is no one person that's always selfless. And if they are always selfless, then they're probably codependent and they're narcissist as well, because their whole focus is on how can I be selfless for someone else? So we all have that level of self protection and safety. But what a narcissist does is they are far enough on the spectrum of it's all about me that it becomes toxic. So almost instead of asking the question, are all toxic relationships narcissistic relationships? I think a better question is, are all narcissistic relationships toxic relationships? And in reality, no. You know, since we all have those different degrees depending on different times, is when we behave, when it's all about us and protecting us ourselves at all costs, and we'll do whatever we have to do, that energy is narcissism. And when some people get together, when someone who has, let's say, borderline personality disorder, um, someone who has a stronger mental health disorder or a stronger disordered past, people who have bigger issues in their lives tend to have bigger narcissism issues as well. And don't get me wrong, many women who are in relationships with narcissists, part of the reason this stuff takes them off guard is because they weren't looking at the world in that bigger, realistic way. They were looking at the world as in, you know, what have we been trained to expect? What have we been uh, wanting to expect? I mean, I know for me, I read thousands of romance novels when I was young, you know, hundreds and thousands of them. And they all sort of shaped my brain as to what a relationship should look like. And because I came from a disordered family, I didn't know what good relationships looked like either. And so I learned from sitcoms and I learned from television and I learned from media. And I had in my mind an idea of what relationships look like. And then when I got somebody in my life who had more issues or more problems or more much more narcissism than I had, um, then it became toxic. But a lot of narcissists, they're able to get along. They're able to have relationships with with certain types of people. You know, let's say someone is more narcissistic because they've got borderline personality disorder. They will get along better with someone who understands borderline personality disorder and understands what might be underneath it: ADD, ADHD, bipolar. And when both people are on board, to that this is what's going on, then someone who has high narcissistic traits can get along very well because the other person doesn't have as many of those codependent issues, as many of those dreams and images and fantasies of what a relationship should look like. So narcissists in those relationships aren't necessarily as toxic because the chemistry between the two people isn't as toxic. The biggest problem with narcissism is when it's on a high level, it tends to attract other people who have a high level of detachment from themselves. They don't have great boundaries, they don't have great self respect, and they don't have a really good view of how the world looks. I knew it was in my upbringing, let's say 20, 30 years ago. I thought it was pretty black and white. There were good people and there are bad people. And only through the healing process, only through the getting help do you realize, oh, you know what? There's just people. There's people on a wide variety of capabilities and abilities and interests and everything. So not all narcissistic relationships are toxic when they're in a relationship with someone who is a good fit for them, who is a good temperament for them. And that doesn't mean someone who gives them everything that they want, because that's pretty enabling. It's someone who says, here's the line, you need to raise up to this line. And if you don't raise up to this line or you don't want to, then you'll naturally leave because you're not going to be getting what you want. So narcissistic relationships are only toxic in the relationship between the two people. Narcissists aren't necessarily toxic to everybody, mainly because someone looks at them and says, you're narcissist, I don't want to have a relationship with you. And they walk away. They say your level of narcissism is higher than I want to deal with. Your mental health disorders are more than I want to work with. And the narcissist will go on their way. They're not toxic because the other person doesn't allow them to be toxic, doesn't allow them to go that far. The biggest battle, the biggest roadblock that we have is our expectations, our naivete, our lack of experience in what relationships really look like and how to take care of ourselves. One of the interesting things about being in a narcissistic relationship with someone is they will push you to grow because they've got so many issues. They've got so many things going on, so much drama, so much complicated psychology that it pushes your buttons and you have the opportunity to really grow. And whether it's with the narcissist, and many times if you're more empathic or codependent, that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea to stick with the narcissist because you've got a lot of your own issues to deal with. You're codependent for a reason. You're naive about the world for a reason. And so many times it's the dynamic, it's the dance that does the most harm, that brings the most toxic sort of thing going on. Now, narcissistic qualities, you already know what they could be like because they're you on a very, 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 very bad day. It's you and what you might be capable of if you were placed in that situation. I had a friend who would go to, who was in the military, and they would come back and they would say, you never know what someone will do when they're in this sort of high drama, high stress, brainwashing situation. You never know what you'll do until you're actually in the situation. And many times we look at a situation from our own lens. We look at a relationship from our own issues, our own wounds, our own problems, the things that we need to work on. Who somebody should be, how we should be treated, what a relationship should look like. The way out, the way to break free is to realize that you get to determine what your relationship looks like. And if the person you're with, that's not what their relationship looks like, that's not what they want out of their life, then that's a toxic relationship. So we all have this level of narcissism depending upon our background, our history, our physicality, because a lot of high levels of narcissism have deeper levels of physical imbalance of some sort, an underdeveloped amygdala or brain chemistry that doesn't work, layered over with trauma and PTSD. This is complicated, complex stuff. This isn't something that's, easy to fix with the snap of a fingers. And when we realize that people who are this damaged, this broken, have these many things going on, that they are all over. We just haven't seen them because in public, maybe there's this mask, or in our own experience, in our own upbringing, we were raised to think that there's good people and bad people, and or that from all my romance novels, this is what a relationship should look like, and it doesn't. Narcissists can be one of the greatest healers, one of the greatest people to help us evolve into the people that we want to be. And so, how does a narcissistic relationship not become toxic? When you find a partner who's just narcissistic enough, just self-absorbed enough that they have that self-respect, that self-care, and they challenge you. They challenge you to look at the world through a different perspective than you always have. They challenge you to grow. When you have that sort of dynamic with a narcissist, when you're able to stay in that place of healing and growth and evolution, then it's not as toxic because you're always detoxing yourself. You're always getting to a better place, and looking at it through a different lens. Especially, or even if it means that you walk away from them, you're like, you know what? I'm strong and healthy enough. I've evolved beyond this. I don't need to be in a relationship with someone that has that many issues. They need more than what I can give, more than I'm willing to give, and that's okay. And you give them your blessing, and let them go on their way. So a toxic relationship is toxic because of the two people involved, because of all the issues going on. And it can be seen as a healing opportunity, or it can be seen as an opportunity to be like, you know what? This is who I am. This is what I want. And I don't want this. I'm not willing to tolerate this. I don't want this in my life. And that's when you walk away. So the best way to break free out of our illusion that there's good people and bad people, and that there's a line, that there's us, me, and then them. The best way to break out of that is to start looking at narcissism as that spectrum, and where you are on that spectrum. How are you insensitive and selfish and self-absorbed? And is it when you're in pain? Is it when you're conflicted? Is it when you get triggered? Is it when a narcissist is screaming at you? Your own narcissism may come out. I've read so many answers that people have written on Quora about narcissists. And it's so interesting, because a narcissist will bring out your narcissist. A narcissist will bring out that self-protection. And codependents and empaths, the problem that they tend to have is that they don't protect themselves. They don't have those boundaries. They haven't developed that self-respect. They don't have that self-esteem. And so it's that dance that's toxic. It's the two of you together that are toxic, not necessarily because there's a narcissist in it, because you're part of the narcissist too. So when we start looking at ourselves as, okay, yes, I have this and they have this, and what do I want? And they're people and I'm people and we're equals. When you start to evolve into that way of thinking, you get a lot of peace. And relationships which were toxic become much less toxic, either because you go no contact, or because you get healthy and you start holding firm and self-respecting yourself, or something else happens that's big, on a big grand scale that you have no control over. So when you change, your relationships change. It's just a natural side effect. They either go away or they stay or they evolve too. So not all narcissistic relationships are toxic relationships, and but all toxic relationships do have an element of narcissism. That's why they're toxic, because both sides are coming in, and it's way off balance. There's way too big of a difference, too much of a divide between the narcissist and the empath. And the empath just doesn't have enough boundaries and confidence to say no more. And I'm going to hold space, but I'm going to hold space on the other side of the world. And the narcissist high level of narcissism, they also have physical issues going on and other issues going on. And so they're way too disordered, to be in a healthier sort of relationship, in a different dance. So when you start breaking out of the us versus them, and they're evil and I'm not, and they're a narcissist, and so hence they should be destroyed, and they're soulless robots who are cookie cutters, and all of this angry, volatile language. When that stuff comes out, yes, the relationship is toxic for you, because those are the thoughts and the feelings that you have in your head. It's you being toxic to you because of someone who is behaving very, very, very badly. But it doesn't mean that they're bad people, although they behave very badly, and the things that they do can be very harmful and painful and emotional and dramatic. But when we're able to take that little bit of a step back and look at how we're contributing to the toxicity of it, how we have narcissism as well, and how we can understand our own narcissism better so that we can handle the high degree of narcissism that's everywhere anymore because of the high level of stress that everybody's under, and the crazy political climate that we have, and the chaos that we're in. People are behaving in more self-protective ways. So if we think of self-protective as narcissistic, yeah, people are behaving in way more narcissistic ways. So you're not going to get away from them. You're not going to get away from the people that these are the things, that they've got struggles and stress and drama. What you can do is look at it as objectively as you can so that you can make good decisions, so that you're not hooked in, so that you're not blinded, you're not deluded, you're not, sideswiped, because you see what's going on. You have a good vision of what's going on. You have a good vision of the bigger picture. And when you do that and you make better decisions, the relationships become less toxic. So, are all toxic relationships narcissistic? Yes. Are all narcissistic relationships toxic? Not necessarily. Depends upon whether the two people are a good fit or not. If their issues are a good blend, if their problems, if their narcissism fits well together. And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. In fact, many times it's when we have two narcissists on either end of the scale, the ones who are more Asperger's or autism, and then the ones who are more borderline or ADD. When those two come together, they can be a pretty good fit. It's not that toxic. But when someone who has high empathy and sensitive feelings get together with someone else who has sensitive feelings and issues and problems, which seems like a natural fit, it would be like, yes, we're soulmates. We both have problems. This is great. Those problems tend to rub together and make a situation very, 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 very toxic. So there you go. If you're feeling disordered, if you're feeling toxic yourself, if you're getting sick, if your stress is high, if you're getting headaches, if your heart palpitations have kicked in, if your rheumatoid arthritis is out of control, you should look for help. And if you know anyone who's dealing with that, please pass these videos on to them, because you don't have to stay here. They don't have to stay there. They don't have to stay in such a toxic, destructive sort of environment or dance. And the way out is to change how we see the world and change how we see ourselves. And when that happens, the toxic relationships kind of go away or become less toxic. So reach out. Got a whole free library, got a whole one-on-one coaching, that I do. Have a whole group coaching program with all these beautiful women in it that support one another. And I also have a year-long program for women who want to take their coaching or their mental health practice, psychologists, mental health nurses, whatever, if they want to take themselves to the level of being a healer, more integrative and holistic. And I can help them be a healer. We've got a great year-long program for that. So I hope you have a great day. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.